Hello everyone and welcome back to Creator in Conversation, the official podcast of TASQ Art. That's TASQ ART, Tala Academy of Sequential Art. As you know by now, TASQ Art is dedicated to comic book creation, the art, design and production. However, within our curriculum here at TASQ Art, we also teach transferable skills, where the skills of the comic book artist can also be applicable in other fields. Throughout this podcast, you have heard leading industry experts, such as the Emmy Award-winning casting and voice director Andrea Romano, or actor and writer Todd Stashwick. Recently, we had Tom Castandino from The Orville, and also Stephen Mooney, who was talking about his work on Half Past Danger, his original creator-owned comic book series, which is currently being adapted into an animated feature film. Now, today's topic came about because just yesterday, as of recording this intro, I was teaching a subject within TASQ Art called Games Narrative. So I was teaching students how to go about designing a video game story, the writer's room equivalency of that, just breaking down what's a linear game and non-linear game, branching, string of pearls, etc. And during the discussion, I was saying it's been a minute since I was teaching pure games, so I was just wondering about what would happen, what's currently happening with the video game industry. And then one of the students mentioned Larian Studios, and I was like, of course. My good friend, John O'Brien, together we worked at Pulse College. We were both involved in the animation program at Pulse College. John subsequently went on to become a producer at Larian Studios and worked on the award-winning Baldur's Gate 3. So just in the March 2024 Dublin Comic Con edition, we have our room where we do some of our panels, and I actually had on record a panel with John. So I decided to take that recording, which I originally gave to my friend John Sutras for his fantastic podcast, Word Balloon. Check that out wherever you get your podcasts. But I was able to extract that out and represent it today. And what's really insightful about this presentation is John talks all about portfolio preparation. He takes Q&A from the audience, and it's really, really insightful. You can also have a good laugh at my expense, as I accidentally spelled Baldur's Gate wrong when I was promoting the talk and actually tagged Larian Studios in it, so a little bit of a faux pas on my part, which is ironic because I was joking with an intern recently in TASQ Art about misspelling my name, so there you go. Everyone makes them mistakes along the way. So sit back and relax and enjoy today's episode of Creator in Conversation with John O'Brien of Larian Studios. Okay, welcome everyone to the Tala Academy Sequential Art panel room. TASQ with a Q. That's what I'm trying to roll the go with the rebranding, is Ireland's latest school focused entirely on comic book production and adjacent fields, which spills into animation and game design as well. Just before this panel, we had character design with Gary Erskine as well, who's taught for a number of years in the field of sequential art and has been published as well. Joining us now is John O'Brien from Larian Studios. Thanks very much, John, for joining us today. A bit of clap, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Fair play, all right. How much do you pay these people, John,
Not enough, apparently.
So, I suppose just to begin with, I heard you working this little game. So something I might have done somewhere else, something called, was it Baldur's Gate?
Yeah, I saw you misspelled it in your post.
Yes,
your hashtags.
Yes, of course I did. But before we get to that stage, I suppose just a little bit on yourself and your career trajectory, because you have a fascinating pathway in how you got into industry, because you've also explored the aspect of education. So you've seen it from both sides, three sides almost. You've been a student, you've been a teacher, and now you're working professionally in the industry as well as content creation in between, and you've also adapted between games and animation. So I suppose I'm going to anticipate one of the biggest questions we often get is, well, how can I work for this year? How can I go in and work in this field? So what was your education? What was your pathway and breaking point?
So I had a funny kind of education route. Like a lot of people, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left school. So I first studied biotechnology, which it was unrelated to anything I do now, and I hated it, so I quit. from there, I was really unsure what I wanted to do. I ended up going to study video game design because I liked video games and figured, hey, why not make them? So I did that up to a master's, and at the end, when I finished college, we were in the middle of a recession. So there wasn't many options for media jobs going at the time, especially for new graduates. So I tried to do anything I could with what I had spent the last 5-6 years studying. So I started teaching part-time, doing animation. From there, I ended up working in Pulse for a number of years, along with Owen. I taught animation for most of that time and a little bit of game design. After I'd kind of felt like I'd done all that I wanted and could do in that, and after I was sick of trying to get jobs for other people and not myself, I decided to get a job for myself. And I went over to work for Baldur Media on the My Little Pony movie that came out a couple of years ago. And that was a great, really fun experience. Did that for a couple of years, and then when the movie was coming to a close, Larian had just released Baldur's Gate 3 EA, and were ramping up the team, so I jumped across and joined Larian and have been there for the last 3 years and very happily ticking along, and released a game last year that's done pretty okay.
What's it been like actually being part of a team like that? Success, that shared success, like that must be like really such a positive feeling, just like getting a buzz out of it every time you see.
When it sinks in, I'll let you know. I do think it's a really it's a question you got. I think there's a few of my workmates in the room here, and I think they probably have the same answer, that I don't really know how to answer that.
Yeah,
it's like, it feels amazing. Like when we were in the studio together watching the Game Awards when we won, most of us just enjoying it and having fun and soaking up the merriment. Per KK there at the back of the room was working at like 4 a.m, 5 a.m, because he does the hard jobs.
Someone decided to sim ship Xbox on the same time.
Oh yes, we did. We shipped Xbox at the same time. Yeah. So, like, those moments are wonderful and they're great, but at the same time, you go into work again the next day or on Monday or whatever day it is, and it's back to the grindstone, because unlike with other forms of media, like with My Little Pony, like I finished up working on it, and then it was in edit for 6 months before release. So you finish, you hand it off, and then after a while it comes back and you can watch it and it's done. But with games, you're constantly supporting them, so the work isn't over. So you don't really get that, okay, great, everything's done, we're finished and that's it, because we're still supporting it, and we will be supporting it for the foreseeable future, because things break, people discover problems, and we're responsible for making sure that is fixed, and the enjoyment for our fans is there. So it's a weird. It is a weird one where you don't kind of get that immediate closure of, great, game's finished, it's been released, we're done, hands off. It's a different experience altogether.
Well, what's very interesting for me in this room, not just even this Comic-Con, we've been doing a room like this for a couple of years now, post-COVID. When I'm speaking with creators, one of the things that stands out is kind of what you were saying when you began your career in education, was to do something that you were interested in. That was a driving. So, and then you mentioned to take care of the fans, to have the fans' interest. I'm working on the assumption, but I'm guessing everyone is a fan now who's walking in the field almost. Like they themselves, like you are the fans, so you kind of have that comparison, that understanding of expectation of what's out there. Has that ever been intimidating, I suppose? Because I know, fair enough, the success hasn't sunk in for you just yet, but as you were saying, but in terms of the when you're walking on it and then you realize, it's a hit, is it intimidating then going into the next step?
Definitely. I mean, there's an intimidation all the time. I mean, I think most people who work in a creative field, even if it's not explicitly in a creative capacity, like there's always imposter syndrome. There's always things like we're working on Baldur's Gate 3. We're working on an IP that other people have developed and is beloved by a number of people, and definitely people my age grew up playing these games, and they're very meaningful to a lot of people. So you've got that intimidation of, okay, there's heavy expectations on this, and also because it's games that were released back 20 odd years ago, you're also dealing with nostalgia and rose tinted glasses and everything, and people think that these games are immaculate, almost religious experiences, and we're coming in and working on the next one. So you have that fear, but I think back to your point that most people in it have the passion for it. Like that comes down from the very top in Larian. I think Sven's biggest mantra is always that we make games that we want to play. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to hit a certain metric that's popular. We're not trying to capture a certain zeitgeist or anything. It's all about making the type of games that we want to play and that will make us happy. There's not many people still making turn-based games out there. A lot of people were of the opinion that a turn-based game in the current generation of video games isn't a viable thing. The way we make games is not the most financially intelligent way of making game, but that's not what we're thinking about when we're doing it. We're thinking about making the most fun that we can. We make a very expensive type of game.
There's an authenticity that's coming through into it between both the players and those making the game as well. You also mentioned, just to go back to your time with Baldur as well, you worked on Ireland's, that was My Little Pony was Ireland's first CG feature-length film as well, wasn't it, to be produced there as well. So that was a significant milestone to have also produced. What was that like, working on it, like between feature animation to now working in games? Like was the shift in pipeline a big leap, or was it something that, okay, you kind of were able to carry some of the framework of what you were used to while working on feature film?
For producing, there's an awful lot of overlap. For the pipelines are very different, but no two companies have the same pipeline anyway. You could work in feature animation in Baldur, you could work in feature animation in Pixar, and the pipelines are going to be totally different because it's based on the composition of your team, the budget that you have, what's available to you in hardware and software and things like that, and the type of film that you're making. Like even from film to film in the same company, the pipelines will change. From game to game, the pipelines will change. The thing that is like a big leap and difference between working in animation and working in games is that it's much more of like a linear waterfall style workflow in animation, where it starts in concept art and you have your story doc, and then it moves through each department until it's ready to render, and then that scene is done. With games, there's still a certain element of linearity to it, but there's so much revision and iteration and tweaking and going back to things that it's a slightly more chaotic pipeline, but it's chaotic by necessity, not by flaw, I guess.
That kind of string of pearls kind of approach to it all, isn't it? Exactly. It's not as linear. And in terms of then, so your current role then, you mentioned about being producer, but specifically 3D environments. Is that correct?
Not exactly.
Go.
So my role is what we kind of class as a horizontal producer. So I work with a number of different departments. So my role is kind of to oversee something going from our narrative design into the game through a number of different departments like writing and scripting and cinematics and VO and combat and level design and a couple of others that are adjacent. But it's basically you're supposed to be like owning that chunk of the game. That's what your allocation is, and just make sure it works.
I suppose that brings up an issue, because you know this term from your time teaching, which is the transferable skills.
Yeah.
So obviously when a student goes in to, like, okay, I want to study animation, I want to study game design, they're then furious when they're asked, why am I doing this essay? Why am I learning about research? But we have to put the emphasis on transferable skills, because as you were saying there, John, you're communicating with different departments. Well, it's horizontal, so it's interlocking, and you have to have that capacity to interact and discuss and to keep clarity along the pipeline. What would you say, being from both your experience, both teacher and in industry, what are some of the most valued skills you would say in terms of those looking to break in, you think they should be put on top of the CV, or maybe dropping in an interview? What would you, are you involved in any recruitment process yourself? Do you have insight into that?
I do some interviews. I'm not. We have a dedicated recruitment team, and they do all the hard work.
Yeah.
But I think the best advice you can give somebody is, I mean, like, everyone knows you need to have a good portfolio. Everyone knows that your work has to be, has to speak for itself to a certain degree when someone's looking at it. But the thing that's going to help you stand out is the soft skills that you can show when you're in an interview. Like, when you are asked questions, are you actually listening to the specific question? Are you giving a coherent answer that you're condensing the information that you need to into something that's easily digestible to pass on to the person? Because that's a real requirement working in industry, to be able to distill down what you're trying to say into a concise answer and give that to the next person, especially for a company like us where we work across 6 different countries with multiple first languages. We've, even within the individual studios, we've people from all over the world, and English may not be their first language. So being able to express yourself in a coherent way to everyone that everyone can understand and won't be misinterpreted is a really important skill to have. Also, just being really passionate and wanting, like, passion comes across, and we're always looking for people with passion and interest, and who are going to want to make the type of games that we want to play, that they want to play, what our fans want to play. And it's very hard to do that when you're not really passionate about it.
It's very vocational, isn't it? It's not like the type of job where you're looking at the clock, ready to clock out. It's kind of like the job where it's like you wake up and you're thinking about it because you love it, It's not like an on-off switch. There's something you mentioned, portfolio, and there's actually a line that I think I stole from you from the time we were in Pulse together that I use when it comes towards portfolio preparation, which is there's no single portfolio. When you're in college and you have different modules, all those modules are designed to privilege your development in the single field you kind of want to go into upon graduation, but you don't cram it all into like one behemoth of a piece. You kind of break it out a little bit more, space it. So like if you're doing something that's more character design focused, your portfolio would lean more into that than your coding ability or something else that you might have studied. You don't force it all in. So in terms of portfolio prep, then you say have a good portfolio. That line always stayed with me. It's not just one portfolio, it's kind of for a different role. Yeah. But is there anything you would say in terms of like make it more specific, or to especially, you can even specify here for clarity's sake about animation, like what would you say to look for, like your portfolio tips, or have you ever received a portfolio tip that stayed with you?
I think the real thing is a problem that some people have, and it's not something that everyone has by any stretch, but I think it goes to that point of you don't have a portfolio, you have a portfolio for the job you're applying to. In the same way, you don't have a CV, you have a CV for the job you're applying to. It should always be tailored to what it is that they're looking for. Don't put a lot of redundant information in. Don't put any redundant work into your portfolio. If your portfolio is going to be for character design, don't go, well, here's all the environments I've made, or here's an animation that I've done. Mm-hmm. Put in, like, show the person who's looking at your CV, show the person who's looking at your portfolio that you understand what the job entails. Don't put in redundant information. It's I think it's one of those things that when I was recruiting people, or part of the recruitment team back in Baldur, it was one of the things that frustrated me, seeing that people would put these huge portfolios or showreels together and maybe 20 to 50% was actually for the job they were applying for. And you're going, well, where is your focus? I would rather have, instead of 20 pieces where 4 of them are relevant, I would rather have 5 or 6 relevant pieces that are really good, that you've put all of your effort into. But yeah, I think that's a major point. And I know it sounds kind of cruel or something like that, but when I'm hiring somebody, and they're applying for a specific job, I don't really care if they can do a different job, because that's not what they've applied for. So, make sure that you're being, again, clear and concise with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for the KISS rule of keep it simple as well. It's always quality over the quantity when putting the material out there. So over the years that you've been involved in industry, what would you say has been the biggest change that you've seen that and I suppose maybe from a technology or maybe software point of view, what's been the biggest? Well, that would have been handy when you were starting out. Is there anything a new latest tool that you would advise anyone considering breaking in or currently studying that they should probably familiarize themselves with this type of tool?
Not really. I don't think the tools evolve. They don't change massively drastically, I don't think. None in my experience, at least. I think processes evolve more. So, the processes get more efficient. So keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening on that side of things. Because again, it's that whole thing of don't be doing something that's redundant. Know what the modern most efficient way to do it is. But also, I think with design and things like that, I don't think it's a case of there's a specific type of tool, there's a specific type of process that you have to adhere to. Show your own personality. I know with a lot of our Cine team, they all have had very unique and different applications when they came in and portfolios and things, and it showed their personality, and that was the most important thing. And some of them are crazy, and some of them are fun, and some of them are really dramatic and stuff. But they're all showing that they understand everyone who's successful. They're all showing the same skills and understanding, but they're doing it in a way that's incredibly representative of their personalities, and that's a really important thing to get across as well. If you can see somebody in their work, if you can understand somebody in their work, it's a much more engaging and endearing application than somebody who's they can recreate a lot of other people's work.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. It was at the first workshop we did here today, we had Rafa Labosco, who's currently working on James Bond with Dynamite Comics. So a lot of similar questions were asked, interest, breaking in, tips. Rafa was pointing out how he broke into industry by working with a lot of indie creators and indie books, and sometimes that's a lot of advice we give to people breaking in, students, is just collaborate, put content out there. Is there any particular platform that you yourself, or you may be aware of within industry, or just yourself individually, that you kind of would turn to or be aware of where up and coming talent might be best to showcase? It could be something as broad as YouTube, or maybe there's a different platform out there.
Honestly, that's not something I have my finger on the pulse of too much, and probably because the last few years have been very busy.
I can imagine.
And I've kind of been singularly focused on my own work. I'm not involved really with recruitment for Larian, so it's not something I'm engaging with a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think anything that gets eyes on your work is worthwhile. It doesn't really, like you said, it doesn't really matter what it is. Just getting your work out there is going to be beneficial in some way. Even
indie publishing stuff helps you show you can keep to a time scale, keep to actually see something through as well. There's a lot to be said for that, as opposed to individual portfolio pieces as well. Absolutely. No, that's super. Okay, so what I'm going to do now at this juncture is throw out any questions on the floor. If anyone has any specific questions that they want to ask at any point into this one here. Yep, go ahead.
How did you decide to settle on animation specifically instead of another creative avenue?
When I moved into industry, I think because I I join because of the projects, more so than anything. If a project is really interesting to me, then or I think might be exciting to work on, then I'd go. The reason I went to work in Baldur was because I have lots of little nieces, and I knew that it'd be really fun to watch My Little Pony with them. And also, it was the first feature-length CG film to be produced in Ireland. So it was, again, like something that I was very proud to be part of. But yeah, I think, and then moving into Larian, like Baldur's Gate 3 was a passion project for me. Like I was a huge fan of the series and a big fan of Larian's work. I think you move around, you find projects that you really want to do until you find somewhere that you want to stay, which is Larian for me. I'm very happy there. I don't feel the need to start looking for other exciting projects because I feel like Larian's just going to keep doing really exciting stuff. So
the company man message right there. It's like the snipe outside the window. We got him right there. No, that's super. Thanks so much for the question. Any other questions? Yeah.
Instead of like obviously having a portfolio specific to the job you're applying for, what would be your advice for, you look on websites like Larian and they have positions for an open application rather than just a specific job? What would your advice be for that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. The thing is, with an open application, you would generally be showing a variety of skills, but the thing is, there's always obviously going to be something that is your real major strength, the thing that you're best at, and that would be the thing I would put the most onus on when you're going for open applications. Obviously, you can show that you're able to do other things, but the risk that you're running then is that just because you can do something, and even just because you can do it well, doesn't mean that you want to do it as a career. So don't pigeonhole yourself into that if that's not something that you're sure you want to do.
How many do we have here currently studying in the field of animation or games? Cool. Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Any other questions? Yep.
How different is it animating for, say, a movie in Maya or whatever you use to animating for games?
I don't animate anymore. Haven't for a good while now. But I think the thing is like in the modern day, it depends. There's not a huge difference between them. I mean, you're going to be using a lot more animation cycles in games, but even at that, there's a lot of animation cycles that are used for feature animation because you don't want to be creating a new walk cycle or a new walk animation every single time a character has to walk. It also depends on what you're doing. I mean, a lot of films and games nowadays are motion capture, which really helps. But like for My Little Pony, we can't suit up a lot of small horses and put them into a booth. So that was all like keyframe animation. There was no motion capture done at all for it. So that was laborious and torturous for the animation team, but they were amazing and did incredible work. But again, it depends on what you're doing. But I mean, again, like I said, every project, every company is going to have their own unique pipeline, their own unique way of doing things. There's principles that are kind of true throughout most of the industry, but again, it's going to depend on the type of project more so than games versus animation.
We actually have a demo tomorrow with Joseph Leroy, who's a 3D animator. He animated for the Marvels with Marvel Studios, and he teaches about the BA in animation and BA in creative tech with Pulse College. But he covers animation both in feature and in games as well. So if you're around on the Sunday as well, that demo would be great. No worries. But check out pulsecollege.com for some of that. There's like usually like demos on open days as well. But with software as well, it's I suppose there's another question as well. But do you ever use Blender much yourself? Back in
the day.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah,
I used to teach on Blender. That was the first thing I was teaching on.
Yeah,
and it's fine.
Yeah. it's great to have because it's free. You see, Maya is uber expensive. Like if you can get a student license, fantastic. But beyond that, you want to be really, your employer want to be picking up the tab for it. But industry standard software standard is always a good step to take when you're using it. So I know you probably get away with Blender for a lot more, film shorts, but you really need Maya if it's going to go into the game engine.
Also, just to give a quick shout out that if you are here tomorrow and you are interested in the cinematic pipeline and all that type of work, my colleague Ellen is giving a talk and she's incredible. So it would be well worth checking out if you are here tomorrow.
Fantastic, awesome. Any other questions on the floor? Oh, we have to. We go here and then we go here. Okay.
Yeah, I'm currently going into college, looking to do things in the game side. Is there any sort of courses or just tips that you would give for like learning how to get into the game industry?
You're probably at the point now where you don't know exactly what role you're going for, because I think the tips change slightly depending on what role specifically it is that you're looking for. But I think it sounds like simple and redundant, but just make games and finish them. I think the biggest problem that people have when they're studying is that they start on projects or they make these small things that they're learning, but they don't have something to show at the end. Like bring it through to show, like Owen mentioned earlier, show that you have the follow through to finish a product, no matter how small it is. If it's a bit buggy, if you don't think it's amazing or whatever, just finish them. Finishing a project is the best learning process that you can have. Don't leave something to the side and go, it's enough. I've learned what I wanted to out of that. Finish a product. It's a big thing. And the other best piece of advice I think I can give for games is it fun? Is the first question you should always ask yourself. I think, is it fun? Is the question you should ask yourself before, does it work? Because the most beautifully made, polished, bug-free game in the world doesn't matter if it's not fun at its heart. And I know it sounds like the most basic advice ever, and you probably go, well, of course you're going to think that. You'd be surprised the amount of people who put that low on the list of priorities. It's really important. It's to me, it's number one. If it's not enjoyable, it doesn't matter. It's not going to have staying power for people. Even as a student game, it should catch people's attention. It should be fun, and that should be the number one thing. And to the point where, like, how many games have you played that have been incredibly buggy and the bugs are actually charm? It happens because it's fun. It has that staying power because of that.
Yes. And so you had a question?
What was that transition like from doing film with My Little Pony to doing now with video games in Baldur's Gate 3? Was there any similarities and differences with the film industry and the video game industry?
There is quite a few. I mean, with CG animation, there's a lot of overlap with, like I was saying, transferable skills, and you'll get a lot of people who have worked in both over the years. I think the main difference, like I said, is that you've a more of a linear workflow for how things work in animation, and generally your main points of communication are going to be the department who come before you and the department who come after you, and that becomes your little blocks of people who are talking to each other. In games, it's much more of a collaborative, especially the way we make games. It's much more of a collaborative process. Everyone needs to be talking to everyone. And that goes top to bottom. We have like all of our creatives. We have our teams who work with our fans in the community, who are bringing back a huge amount of information to us about what people are enjoying, what people aren't, what are the main things people are talking about at that time, and that gives us a lot of information on what we should be focusing on. So it's everyone has to talk to everyone. It's much more of a collaborative process. Rather than a linear process, and it means that there's a lot of iteration, a lot of change, a lot of going back and checking something, and so it's I think that was the major difference for me. It's a nightmare for a producer not having a linear process, but I think it also keeps it really interesting and fun and different all the time. Every day is different. whereas you got into a much more of a flow in animation.
So, just thanks so much. Any other question? Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll go this way now.
You mentioned transferable skills are very important. So if you're applying for a game company and it's your first gig that you're looking for straight out of college, is it better to show that you've tried a load of different game making programs, or is it better to show that you've really focused in on one or two programs to learn in depth?
Programs, I don't think are the most important thing, because you depending on where you go, you might be working in Unreal, you might be working in Unity, you might be working in a company's own engine. So what's most important is less about the software and the tools that you're using and more about the principles of game design. If you can show that you understand the principles of game design, and like I said, is it fun? If you're coding, that's where, being bug free and clean and functioning properly is a good thing. That's not where you should leave in charming bugs. But once you can show that you understand the principles, the tools that you've used to build the game are less important.
Okay, so if a company used mainly Unreal and say you did most of your projects in Unity, it wouldn't be like, oh, if they use the wrong program, you can't look at their CV. Would they still do that?
No, I mean, if they specifically state that we want you to have experience in Unreal, you should definitely show that you have experience in Unreal. But what I'm saying is, with your portfolio projects, it's less important to show that you understand the principles and that you can make games, especially the type of games or something that is reminiscent or shows some principles of design of the games that they make. That's the most important thing.
Thanks so much. And over this way, yeah.
When it comes to portfolio, like a producer's portfolio is a lot different than a designer's or an artist. Like as a producer, what they should include in their portfolio.
I don't have a portfolio. For producers, it's more about talking about the work that you've done. It's generally it's going to be more focused, in my experience at least, around how do you deal with your team, how do you deal with change, how do you deal with a process being in flux, how do you how do you deal with certain problems that are inevitable in a production cycle, how do you manage those problems. I think one thing that's important for producers is also being able to speak truth to power. It is your job. If something is too expensive, if something is going to negatively affect something in some way, shape or form, it's your job to identify that and to let people know. It doesn't matter who asked for it, you have to be able to go back and tell them, hey, this may not be the best idea, but here's all the evidence as to why, or this isn't going to work. But you should never come back with just this isn't going to work. It's this isn't going to work, but I can give you that. That's like it. So you don't have a portfolio, but you will be asked a lot about how you deal with people, how you deal with projects, what problems have you encountered, and that type of thing. That's kind of the main thing for producers. It's about how you deal with people. It's a people job. It's a people industry, really. So
yeah.
How does your day as a producer looks like in your studio?
Spreadsheets is that's the it's not all I do. It's a lot of what we do. But my job is, like I said, that there isn't now in games. I don't have a standard day. I have lots of meetings. I talk with lots of people. Like I said, we're spread out over 6 studios in 6 countries, so you can't just go and chat to everyone at their desk. So it involves setting up calls and chatting to people in different countries, sometimes in just drastically different time zones. So in the morning, I talk to Kuala Lumpur if I need to. In the afternoon, I talk to Quebec. And whenever throughout the day, I talk to our European studios. So it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of trying to keep track of any changes that are coming in for the work that we're doing, making sure that they're communicated to everybody. checking in with the teams that I'm working with and making sure that there isn't something blocking their progress. And lots and lots of spreadsheets.
Awesome. And then just in the back there.
Yeah, just going back to you talking about like speaking truth to power, but also keeping teams collaborative. As a producer, how would you help facilitate that communication? Like, do you have any like tips or tricks or
Between departments?
Yeah.
It kind of depends on what you're doing. And it depends on, like, it really depends on the teams that you're working with, because there's different ways you can approach it. But the main thing is, it's your job is to ensure that the lines of communication are kept open. And one of the biggest risks that I've experienced in development of projects is as a project gets closer to finishing and the time pressures start pushing down heavier on teams, and I noticed this on My Little Pony, and less so in Larian, because it is, as I said, a much more collaborative process. But as you're getting closer and the crunch is starting to hit and people feel really pressured, you'll sometimes notice that departments start to shrink back into themselves and become islands, because they're focused on, we have to finish by this date. That is an immovable thing. So we have to make all of our work fit within that box. And what happens is people get really, really focused on that, and they start to look more inwardly. When really the best approach is to do the complete opposite. Like I said, we're much better in Larian at this because it is a process that requires everyone to be talking all the time, and people, like, everyone is subscribed to that. But the closer you're getting to those points where the pressure is in and time is running out, the more you need to be leaning on the departments around you, because just because something might be assigned currently on the writing department or the cine department or the scripting department, it doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity for another department to do it in a way that might be more efficient, that might be, or who might just have more bandwidth to do it at that time. So if people start looking inwardly, it becomes a case of, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, So writing have a tool that they specifically use. They write lines of dialogue. Scripting will use our systemics and mechanics. Cinematics will use a cinematic scene. Everyone has a specific way that they can solve that problem. It doesn't mean that it's the right way or the best way in that moment. So as we get closer to the end, that's when you need to be communicating a lot more to ensure that you're being the most efficient with everybody. So that's, I think, it's not really a tip to your question on how to keep those lines open, but it's just a point of how you do it is going to vary depending on it. Like it varies right down to the specific people that you're working with, because some people, like different people, will react differently to different methods and approaches. So the main thing is, I think, just to avoid that pitfall of everybody just going into themselves and headphones on and head down, working towards the end, because they're missing out on a really good opportunity to work collaboratively with somebody to reduce the amount of stress and pressure on them.
So
Awareness is a big thing. Yeah. Awesome. Also, just keep checking in with people. So, like, I think the biggest thing is treat people like humans. That's the thing. Don't treat them like resources. Don't treat them like another piece of software. And for producers, that's particularly pertinent. Talk to your team, have fun with your team, have jokes with your team, grab coffee with your team, whatever the case may be. Just do those type of things. It's really important.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. That's kind of bringing us up to time now. The next panel after this will be Women in Animation panel, followed by Outsider Games. So thank you very much, and thanks very much, John, for answering everyone's questions. Thank you. My thanks again to John for his permission to reshare this episode on our conversation from Dublin Comic Con, and thank you for listening. If this is your first time finding our podcast, you're welcome to go back through our archive. We have 40 plus episodes now, ranging from interviews with Frank Miller, Paul Levitz, Elliot S. Magan, Megan Fitzmartin, many, many more. So there's something for everyone, particularly if you have an interest in comic books or the adjacent fields. At this time of recording, I'm just about to fly out later this week to Malta Comic Con, where I hope to record some panel interviews there as well. So I'll be just interviewing some of the creators and hopefully bringing them back. So the next episode you'll be hearing will hopefully be a recording from Malta Comic Con, a great show, and I highly recommend it if you have an opportunity to make it over to Malta Comic Con. And I want to thank everyone again for listening. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps us to grow the podcast, and it's all connected. The growth of the podcast will help get word out about the Academy and vice versa. Until next time, this has been a copyright production of Macaulay Consultancy 2025.